Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty cutting-edge in hand surgery. We're exploring a proposed robotic system, DupuyFix, designed to, well, revolutionize how we treat Dupuytren's contracture. Our source today is a really detailed paper proposal. It's called DupuyFix, a robotic precision system for safe, targeted cord injection. Quite a mouthful, but basically it's about a smart delivery platform aiming to minimize complications. So our mission here is to unpack how the system works, why it's needed, and what it could mean for patients and doctors dealing with this common hand condition. Okay, let's unpack this. To really get this, we should look at who's behind the proposal. It's a really interesting pairing. First, there's Dr. Samantha Mulrad. She's the chief of hand surgery at Stony Brook University Orthopedic Associates. So she brings that vital, real-world clinical viewpoint, sees this stuff day in, day out. And then you have Dr. Lev Nemotin. He's the CEO of N5 Digital, Inc., bringing the tech and R&D side, the engineering and innovation expertise.
Yeah, and that combination is, I think, what makes this proposal so compelling. You've got the deep clinical understanding of the problem, what actually happens in the clinic, the surgeon's challenges, and then you have the technological know-how to build a solution. It's that blend, that interdisciplinary approach that often drives real breakthroughs in medical devices like this one. It's grounded in practice.
Absolutely. And that brings us straight to the core problem DupuyFix is designed to solve, which is laid out really clearly in the abstract of the paper. Right now, using collagenase injections for Dupuytren's, which is a great minimally invasive idea in theory, is still very reliant on, well, the skill of the person doing the injection. It's manual. And that manual approach, it inherently limits precision. It's just hard to be perfectly consistent. The paper points out the risks that come from that lack of precision. Skin tears, bruising, even serious things like tendon ruptures.
Exactly.
And these aren't just minor side effects. They cause real problems, lead to patient dissatisfaction, and frankly, make some doctors hesitant to use the collagenase treatment, even though it has benefits.
It really boils down to the limitations of, well, human dexterity for these super delicate procedures. The abstract emphasizes this point. People have suggested better techniques, more training, but none of that fully gets around the basic issue of hand-eye coordination when you're working blind, essentially, inside the tissue. You're trying to hit a very specific target, the cord, without hitting anything else nearby. It's tough to do perfectly every time. So it begs the question, right? If manual operation itself is the bottleneck, what's the next step? What's the breakthrough?
That is the key question, isn't it? And the answer proposed here with DupuyFix, it isn't just about improving manual skill, it's about moving beyond it. The abstract introduces DupuyFix, its patent pending, as this unique combination of robotic targeting, real-time feedback from the tissue itself, and AI control. The goal is explicit. Take human error out of the equation for these injections. They describe it as a compact system. It holds the hand steady, maps the anatomy precisely, and delivers the drug with pressure sensitivity. The potential here is huge, maybe setting a new standard, reducing the need for extensive training, and just making the whole procedure safer and more predictable.
Okay, but before we dive deeper into the tech, let's just take a step back and make sure we all understand the condition itself, Dupuytren's contracture. It's this chronic thing, progressive, happens in the palm. You get these nodules, then thick cords form under the skin. And these cords, they slowly pull the fingers down, usually the ring and little finger, in this permanent bunt position. You can't straighten them fully. You might have heard it called Viking's disease. It has a strong genetic link, particularly in people with Northern European roots. But the impact is very real. Imagine simple things, shaking hands, putting on gloves, playing an instrument becoming difficult or impossible. It really affects quality of life.
And the anatomy there is critical context. Understanding where this happens explains why precision is so non-negotiable. These cords form in the palmar fascia, which is like a layer of connective tissue in your palm. But right next to, and sometimes tangled up with these cords, are really important structures. You've got the flexor tendons, they're what let you bend your fingers. Inject the enzyme there by mistake, big problem. Tendon rupture is possible. You also have digital nerves running right alongside, controlling sensation, and blood vessels too. It's a crowded neighborhood, anatomically speaking. So yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you're working in a very small, delicate area where a tiny error can have significant consequences. Precision is everything.
Right. So with that context, let's look at how it's treated now and why DupuyFix might be needed. There's traditional open surgery, of course. Surgeon goes in, cuts out the diseased tissue. Full visualization, but it's invasive, needs anesthesia, longer recovery, risk of nerve damage, and the contracture can still come back. Then there's something called percutaneous needle fasciotomy. Less invasive, using a needle to break the cord, but it's done blind, just by feel, so recurrence rates are pretty high. But the focus for DupuyFix is on the third option, manual enzymatic injection. specifically using collagenase Clostridium histolyticum, or Ciaflex. This is the only FDA-approved enzyme treatment. A tiny amount of this purified enzyme is injected right into the cord. Over a day or two, it dissolves the collagen in the cord, weakening it so the doctor can then manually straighten the finger. The advantages are obvious. It's minimally invasive, done in the office, no cuts, no general anesthesia, quicker return to activities. Seems great, right?
It does seem great, but, and this is the crucial but, the paper highlights, there are significant downsides to doing it manually. First, the results can vary a lot. It really depends on the skill of the injector. And more importantly, there's a surprisingly high risk of side effects, adverse events, precisely because of poor targeting or the enzyme spreading where it shouldn't. The paper cites things like skin tears, which can happen in up to 20 or even 30% of cases in trials. Also nerve issues, swelling, bruising, inflammation. And a key point they make is the enzyme isn't perfectly selective. It breaks down type I and 3 collagen. Yes, that's in the Dupuytren's cord, but it's also in your skin, in the walls of your blood vessels, even in tendons. So if you don't put it exactly in the cord and keep it there, it can damage nearby healthy tissue. That non-selectivity makes precise delivery absolutely critical.
Which brings us right back to that core issue the paper calls the mismatch. You have this precise drug, the collagenase, but you're delivering it with an imprecise tool, the human hand. Manual injection relies so much on the doctor's experience, their ability to feel the cord, judge the depth. It's tactile. But that makes it inherently variable, especially if the hand anatomy is complex or the cord is difficult to feel. And this variability leads to inconsistent results and, frankly, holds back wider adoption of the therapy. The risks are directly tied to that imprecision. Needle goes too shallow, enzyme hits the skin, causing tears. Needle goes too deep, it could hit a tendon or nerve. Enzyme spreads sideways, affects blood vessels, causing bruising, or just injecting too much volume. It all stems from not hitting the target perfectly.
And the paper digs into the dynamics of these manual errors, which is fascinating. It's not just random scatter. They found that errors in depth injecting too shallow or too deep are about twice as likely and potentially more severe than errors in placement side to side or laterally. Think about it. Judging depth accurately just by feel once the needle is under the skin is incredibly difficult. There's no direct visual guide. The path is longer vertically. Tactile resistance can be misleading. The summary table they include really drives this home. Things like skin tears, estimated 15–30% frequency, and pain near the tendon sheath, 5–10%, mostly linked to depth errors. Even the most severe complication, tendon rupture, thankfully rare, less than 0.5%, but it's primarily caused by injecting too deep, hitting the tendon. Lateral errors, they can cause temporary numbness or tingling if a nerve is affected, or maybe injure a small artery, but depth seems to be the bigger challenge. So, stepping back, it really underscores that even with skilled surgeons, there are fundamental limits in manual control and feedback that lead to these risks.
Okay, so that sets the stage perfectly for DupuyFix. This is the proposed solution to overcome those limitations. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's break down how this system is actually designed to work. It's not just one thing, it's several components working together. First up, the hand stabilization module. This sounds simple, but it's key. It's an ergonomic cradle, basically molded to the hand, with straps. It holds the patient's hand completely still. Why? To ensure the target doesn't move during imaging and injection. It makes the whole process repeatable and precise, eliminates patient movement error. Then you've got the imaging and cord localization system. This is the eyes of the operation. It uses high-resolution ultrasound in real time to see the cord, measure its depth, and visualize all those critical nearby structures, tendons, nerves, vessels. But it's smarter than just ultrasound. It uses AI to interpret the images and create a 3D map, overlaying it on the view, highlighting the safe zones for injection, kind of like a GPS for the needle. And they mention an option to upgrade to OCT optical coherence tomography. That's like ultrasound but uses light, giving even higher resolution, almost microscopic views. Super detailed. Next comes the precision-guided injection arm. This is the robotic part. It's an injector on a multi-axis rail. Based on that AI map, it calculates the exact path, angle, and depth needed to hit the geometric center of the cord while actively avoiding the no-go zones. It can also perform multiple injections along the cord very quickly and accurately within one session, faster, more thorough. And importantly, there's always a manual override for the physician. And finally, the adaptive enzyme delivery unit. This isn't just pushing a plunger, it's a digitally controlled syringe system. It measures tissue resistance as it injects, using tiny force sensors, and adjusts the injection rate and pressure dynamically. So it adapts to the tissue density in real time. This allows for very controlled dosing, potentially enabling more frequent smaller dose injections, which might be gentler. And it has a protocol to kind of seal the injection track afterwards to minimize enzyme leakage.
And if you put all those pieces together, you can see how this architecture directly tackles those depth and lateral errors we talked about with manual injection. It gives you the visualization that's missing. It gives you the automated, repeatable control. It delivers the enzyme precisely where you want it based on real-time feedback. And that note about enzyme neutralization is important too. Since there's no off switch or antidote for the collagenase once it's in there, the best strategy is just not to put it in the wrong place to begin with. Precision delivery is the risk mitigation strategy, and that's what DupuyFix seems engineered to provide.
Okay, the text sounds impressive. Let's zoom out now. What are the bigger implications? What does this mean for actual clinical practice, for patients? The paper talks about clinical benefits, things like predictable, standardized results. Doesn't matter if the doctor is highly experienced or newer, the machine ensures consistency. That should lead to dramatically lower complication rates, a shorter learning curve for providers wanting to offer the treatment, plus better record keeping. Everything's logged, volume, pressure, exact location. More transparency for everyone. So how does this stack up against the current way?
Well, the paper draws a really stark clinical comparison. Think about it. Manual method, highly operator-dependent. DupuyFix, standardized, reproducible. Manual, high risk of leakage, misplacement. DupuyFix, controlled, AI-guided targeting. Manual, no imaging guidance, relies on feel. DupuyFix, real-time ultrasound and AI mapping. Manual is often sort of one-size-fits-all injection points. DupuyFix allows personalized multi-point injections based on the specific cord anatomy and tissue resistance. Manual pressure, variable. DupuyFix, resistance-guided, auto-calibrated delivery. It's really a night and day difference on paper. And they touch on future capabilities too, things like integrating directly with electronic health records, using augmented reality overlays for training surgeons, even potentially adapting the platform for other conditions like plantar fibromatosis in the foot, or maybe even treating keloid scars. It seems like a platform technology.
That adaptability points to the strategic opportunity, right? DupuyFix could fill a real gap. It's positioned as the first intelligent injection platform for Dupuytrens. That's potentially a large market, and the tech seems protectable with patents. But what about the systemic disruption? How might this change clinical practice? This is always a big question with new automation. Currently, thousands of these injections are done yearly, mostly by specialists. The paper suggests that by making the procedure safer and more standardized, DupuyFix could potentially allow trained physician assistants or technicians to perform the injections under supervision. This could free up specialists for more complex tasks, diagnosis, planning, and potentially expand access to care, especially in underserved areas.
Right.
Some might see that as a threat, but the paper argues it enhances medical judgment rather than replacing it. The specialist is still crucial for the overall management, setting up the system, overseeing the procedure. It's about optimizing workflows.
And that optimization likely leads to significant economic advantages. The paper outlines several. First, fewer complications means lower costs for treating those complications, less follow-up, fewer additional procedures, maybe lower insurance or litigation costs. That 20–30% complication rate currently is expensive. Second, efficiency. If the procedure is faster, say 10–15 minutes quicker per session, that adds up to huge labor cost savings across thousands of procedures. Third, potentially fewer repeat treatments needed if the first one is more effective due to better placement, lower total cost per cure. And fourth, maybe fewer patients needing to progress to full open surgery, which is much more expensive. All this has a positive impact on payers and patients. For insurance companies, it looks like a higher value, lower risk option, better outcomes for less cost potentially. For patients, less pain, faster recovery, maybe less need for pain meds or wound care, shorter time in the clinic, and potentially lower out-of-pocket costs if complications are avoided. But beyond the dollars and cents, what's the human side?
That's a great point. The paper emphasizes the human value, reduction in pain and suffering. And this isn't trivial. Apparently, the traditional step after the enzyme injection, where the doctor manually manipulates and breaks the weakened cord, well, that can be quite painful and even distressing for patients, you can imagine. The DupuyFix approach, potentially using more precise, maybe lower dose, multi-point injections, could allow for a gentler, more gradual weakening and stretching process.
Yeah.
Less traumatic. By minimizing tissue damage and enabling a smoother recovery, it offers a more humane, patient-focused experience. That alone could encourage more people to seek treatment earlier. So, pulling it all together, looking at the executive summary in the paper, was final takeaway. DupuyFix is presented as a really transformative leap for managing Dupuytrens, a potential paradigm shift. It aims to overcome those core limitations of manual injections by integrating imaging, stabilization, robotics, AI planning, and adaptive delivery. All those pieces working together.
The claim is it doesn't just improve precision slightly. It potentially enables error-free, rapid treatment with fewer side effects, setting a whole new standard for this type of procedure.
And I think a final thought is how this kind of technology reframes the role of the expert clinician. It moves them away from the purely mechanical task, which machines can often do more consistently, towards oversight, complex decision-making, planning the therapy. It's about leveraging human expertise where it adds the most value. Ultimately, the vision is for a more efficient, more accessible, and importantly, more compassionate way to deliver care. It's technology augmenting, not replacing, the human touch in medicine.
That's a really insightful way to put it. And that wraps up our deep dive into the DupuyFix proposal. Hopefully this has given you, our listeners, a clearer sense of how robotics and AI are making inroads into procedures you might not expect, aiming for higher precision and better patient experiences. It definitely leaves you thinking, doesn't it? What other medical procedures out there, the ones that currently rely heavily on manual skill and feel, might be next in line for this kind of intelligent robotic approach?
It's a fascinating question. The potential impact on how healthcare is delivered, and more importantly, how patients experience it, is truly profound, moving beyond just efficiency towards tangible human benefit.